So Rick Grinnell, the acting DNI, it has been declassifying some footnotes. He declassified the footnotes in IG Michael Horowitz's report, and then on the 15th, he declassified more information and gave senators more than what they asked for. So transparency, which I would think is great, but yet Adam Schiff is very angry, and he's come out quite vocally against Rick Grinnell. What's Adam Schiff afraid of?
Well, Adam Schiff is afraid of honesty. Remember, from the beginning of this entire charade, he has been lying to the American people from the perch of either his ranking minority member on the Intelligence Committee when the Republicans were in charge, or as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. And what he has done is consistent with the conduct of Comey, Clapper, Brennan, and McCabe. He has put out literally, this is very important to understand, false information, knowing that it was false. You will recall the famous incidents in which Nunes put out a report which has now proven to be 100% correct about illegal conduct by FBI and CIA officials, and that Schiff refuted that publicly with statements saying that everything that Nunes put out was false, knowing all along that everything that Nunes was saying was true. I know this is Kafkaesque, and saying it almost sounds unbelievable, but what Schiff is afraid of is that more people inside the intelligence community who are going to be displaced by Grinnell are going to be forced to, or may have already spoken with John Durham. What Schiff is doing is he's preparing help for potential defendants for jury pools in the District of Columbia. In other words, he's trying to dirty up jury pools to make them think that whatever Durham is going to do is politically motivated. So we have a rather bizarre, horrible dance going on. Adam Schiff is really one of the most evil and disgusting human beings ever put on the face of the earth.
Joe, what do you think of Acting Director of National Intelligence Rick Grinnell declassifying this information, and why did it take Rick Grinnell to finally do that?
Well, his predecessor, not immediate predecessor, this guy McGuire, was awful, absolutely awful. He was an apparatchik. He was, another great career bureaucrat, just like Michael Atkinson. But the real disappointment is Dan Coates, the former director of national intelligence, who permitted all of this to occur and did nothing to fix it and harmed President Trump from the first day he, Coates, was ever appointed as DNI. Grinnell came in with the complete confidence of the president with an edict, with a mandate, and it was to, A, get rid of people who were disloyal to the United States, not the president, disloyal to the United States. And we have to underscore that. This has nothing to do with loyalty to the presidency. It has to do with disloyalty to the United States. He got rid of a bunch of people. He's getting rid of more. He's sizing down. But he had the complete confidence of the president. And the president knew that Grinnell wasn't afraid, didn't care about whatever his next job was going to be, like Chris Wray. He's not a Chris Wray. Grinnell is a superstar. He is an American hero. He is a great, great guy, someone that Victoria and I have known for a long time. He's an amazing human being. He's got guts. He loves to fight. And, boy, I can't wait to see him engage with Adam Schiff.
You had mentioned Durham and mentioned getting grand juries in the district and how Adam Schiff is trying to muddy the waters for that. You don't have to do much to get a jury in the district to not give any kind of indictment to anyone who would be possibly in favor of the president. Can Durham take it outside of the district to try to get grand juries outside of the district, or does this have to happen within D.C.?
Well, where a grand jury sits is a function of what's called venue. In other words, there has to be a connection legally to the place where the acts occurred. I've always thought that there was a sufficient connection in the Eastern District of Virginia because that's where the CIA sits and that's where the conspiracy was born in John Brennan's office. And I would assume that he is using grand jury subpoenas from the District of Columbia because the majority of the activity occurred literally between Capitol Hill, Adam Schiff's office, the FBI building, and the White House during the Obama administration. If you follow a straight line between those three places and sort of hook on to the CIA out in Langley, you end up with about 75% of the activity occurring in the District of Columbia. And make no mistake about it, the reason Susan Rice is squealing and screaming about Grinnell is because she knows she's in the crosshairs of John Durham. We shall see, but the bottom line is it's going to be tough to bring an indictment anywhere else unless you can prove that there were meetings and conversations that occurred outside the district. So for the moment, we're left with what we have.
Mm-hmm. Joe, what else, if anything, are you hearing about the Durham investigation?
Well, we know that Mike Rogers, the former head of the National Security Agency, the great admiral who blew the whistle on to the President of the United States about how he was being spied on, we know that Rogers has met with the Durham regularly, we are told, regularly, in an effort to explain NSA activities and the violation of NSA rules by Susan Rice and others. One of the things we know is that there has been grand jury testimony. There's no doubt about that. And he's not doing that to write a report. And I want to underscore for our WMAL listeners that what Bill Barr said the other day was very important. He said Durham is not there to write a report. He may end up writing a report as part of his activities, but he is there to bring charges. And that's what he's doing. So my guess is he's not going to bring stuff that's weaselly. I'm expecting a broad conspiracy charge, which will be against Brennan and others, to deny the president and people associated with the president, including Carter Page, of their civil rights, but also a huge conspiracy count to defraud the United States government of the faithful servants of its employees.
Joe, hang tight, would you? We want to keep you around?
Sure.
Okay, good, because I've got more questions for you about specifically Admiral Mike Rogers, the revelations we found out last week in those declassified footnotes about Russian disinformation being in the dossier, and how that affects that 2017 intelligence community assessment. So many questions for Joe Digenova, and I'll have those answers in just a moment. All right, we've got former U.S. Attorney Joe Digenova with us, as always, on Mondays. And Joe, I want to ask you about these revelations, courtesy of all of this declassification that's being done by Rick Grinnell, revealing that there was definitely Russian disinformation that the FBI was aware of inside of that dossier prepared by Hillary Clinton and the DNC designed to take down Donald Trump. And when I saw that, Joe, confirmation of something that we've all suspected for a long time, it made me think back to the intelligence community assessment in the beginning of 2017, which declared without qualification that the goal of the Russians was to help get Trump elected and help to defeat Hillary Clinton. But this information, Joe, that we're seeing now, that was in the hands of the government, proves that the Russians had the goal of chaos, not of the destruction of Hillary Clinton. What do you make of all that and the role specifically of Mike Rogers, the former NSA director?
Well, Mike Rogers is the American hero of the entire attempt to remove the president from office. He is the one who blew the whistle early and often to the FISA court, and then first to the president and then to the FISA court. But here's what you need to know about that: the intelligence assessment that was commandeered and asked for by President Obama. It was designed for one reason and one reason only. It was to get John Brennan to create an assessment which would dog President Trump's administration for its entire first term. It was designed as a piece of classic intelligence operation to influence domestic politics. The assessment, the national assessment, will be the centerpiece of a conspiracy indictment against John Brennan and others. And I commend to our listeners a very, very good article by Jeff Carlson, who writes not only for the Epic Times, but has his own blog called The Marketplace Works, a piece yesterday where he outlines the importance of the footnotes and what they mean. It is a devastating piece. And what it does, it underscores without any doubt that Comey and Brennan and Clapper committed perjury in both the House and the Senate during the investigations. It underscores the centrality of the intelligence assessment to the conspiracy that was being waged by Brennan and Comey and others against the president. The president, the candidate, the president-elect, and then the president. None of this could have occurred without the use of a Russian informant who was known at the time to be unbelievable and a liar, a guy named Vyacheslav Trubnikov. He is the central figure. He is what has been called the little Russian operative who helped Stephen Halper manufacture the Steele dossier. And also our listeners should remember, in one moment of truth, Andrew McCabe told the intelligence committees there never would have been a Carter Page FISA warrant without the Steele dossier. We now know from the declassified footnotes, not only is that true, but we now know the contours of the conspiracy against the president. It's devastating. Now, you will hear none of this in the mainstream media. The Washington Post and the New York Times continue to insist that there was always a basis to investigate the president. God help us if we want to have a First Amendment. We must not leave the protection of that amendment to the Washington Post and the New York Times. They are disgraceful.
Joe, I'm worried about the timeline. You had said again, going back to the grand juries, if we're not doing those things now because Washington D.C. is shut down, and John Durham is not to write a report, he's there to get indictments. He's there to prosecute crimes. Do we get too close with the timeline to the election and have to put all of that on hold until after the election? And if Trump loses, then we're in trouble.
That's not going to happen. My understanding is the decision has been made that when Durham decides he's ready to indict, he's going to indict. It could be 3 days before the election. He's going to indict.
Okay.
They are not going to wait. They are going to force the issue on either a second Trump administration, which I pray occurs, and have this play itself out in a court system which may be rigged against Republicans and in favor of conspirators in the District of Columbia. And let me just and then they've decided they're going to take that step. They're not going to let the election interfere with whether or not an indictment's brought. They're just not going to do it.
It's incredible. I mean, it's just incredible. And one of the reasons I brought up Admiral Mike Rogers, who I'm glad you've brought up so many times, Joe, on our show, because I think
great hero.
The people who are doing the right thing deserve to get credit for that. I just see these headlines that you're referencing, that Mike Rogers has been cooperating extensively with John Durham to help him in his investigation. And also that intelligence community assessment that I cited at the top here. Remember, when everyone else came out and said that there's no question, high degree of confidence, Russia was trying to get Trump elected, the only agency to dispute that degree of confidence was the National Security Agency, led by Admiral Mike Rogers, who said they did not have the same confidence as John Brennan and James Clapper. That's a big deal, and I'm looking forward to the day that Admiral Mike Rogers speaks out in public, maybe even here on this show. I'd love to have him for an interview on what really went down during the Obama administration.
He's a great American, and he is really the hero of this story. And and as I've said before, every evil person in this story is a lawyer or a political operative. The only hero in this story, or an FBI agent, those corrupt FBI agents like Pientka and Soma, and all these other people. Yeah. Mike Rogers stood up as a great American, and he deserves the Medal of Freedom from this president at the appropriate time.
Joe, in 30 seconds, we're going to be joined by Roger Stone at 8:35. Can you believe, what are we to make of Judge Jackson telling him no new trial? It was not, you can't prove that the lead juror, did anything wrong.
Let me just say this about Judge Jackson. She is an embarrassment to the district court and the history of great judges on that court. She has been clearly partisan. It pains me to say this. I've known Amy Berman Jackson. She was an assistant United States attorney in my office. I've been embarrassed by her performance. I think she's clearly become a partisan in this. Her ruling in this case with regard to Roger Stone is disgraceful. It is quite obvious that the jurors were prejudiced. And may I say, her voir dire, her examination of the jurors was so flawed, so embarrassing, so juvenile, so sophomoric, that she should be removed from these cases. She is no longer a fair and impartial judge. She has become a Trump hater. Her rulings are clearly biased against the president and his supporters. Roger Stone not only deserves a new trial, he deserves a pardon.
All right. Next time, Joe, don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel, okay? Thank you, Joe. Joe Digenova, always good to have you with us.